Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Wanda Gray, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Today's topic is Creativity Connects the World, and we'll explore how art builds global understanding. Our presenter today is Sherry Sturman, our Director of Education, and Sherry will be on in just a few minutes to get us started. But just wanted to remind you that this webinar is being brought to you by the Champion Creativity Community, hosted here on EdWeb. Also, this presentation is part of our Champion Creatively Alive Children Professional Development Series. And this series is a compilation of 7 individual workshops that are aimed to help infuse art into the classroom. These resources are available along with our lesson plans on Crayola.com/educators. So please go to our site to access these wonderful resources. If you have not already done so, we would like to invite you to become a member of our Champion Creativity, the Power of Arts Infused Education community. As a member of the community, you'll receive invitations to upcoming webinars, webinar recordings and resources, not only for today's webinar, but previous webinars that we have hosted in the past. You'll have access to CE quizzes, as well as be able to participate in online discussions. Use the link to join the community, edweb.net/creativity, posted there at the bottom of your screen. If you have logged in with your email address today, you will, first let me tell you that you will be able to receive a certificate, a CE certificate for participation in today's webinar. In order to receive your certificate, if you logged in live with your email address, you will receive a certificate within 24 hours to that email address that you used to log in. If you joined via the phone, you would have to take a CE quiz prior to receiving your certificate. And if you're watching the recording later, you would need to take the CE quiz to, again, access your certificate. So please, make sure that you are aware that you would need to join the community in order to access the quiz in our webinar archives folder in the community toolbox. And we are about to get started, but we always love to kick off our presentations with a beautiful piece of artwork that represents the topic for today. And so this child's drawing it's just always so fun to see what these are going to look like. But this child's drawing of Sherry shows how art helps us see the world and other cultures in new ways. It opens our eyes with a new lens. We learn about ourselves and others as we use art to explore global issues. And when you look at the picture, it's just fun to see the eyes going in different directions, representing different points of view, and the lips, different stories that are spoken from people around the world. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Sherry Sturman to kick us off and get us started for today's presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Wanda. And we'd like to welcome all of you to this session today. The Creativity Connects the World. We're really excited about this topic. Art is so important in helping children understand the world around them and other people and other cultures. I always like to start off by thanking the partners who helped us develop the Champion Creatively Alive Children series, and you can see their names here on the slide. We work closely with the National Association of Elementary School Principals. We're members of the Partnership for 21st Century Learning, and great partners with the National Art Education Association. So if you've joined other webinars before, you know how this is part of the series that we have, which talks about how art builds 21st century skills. And we also have 2 sessions on how creativity connects us, connects families and schools, and connects the world. And so all of those are available, as Wanda said, on Crayola.com. So we start off by talking about the objectives for today's webinar. And the first is to explore why global awareness is a 21st century skill. The next is for you really to be thinking about how you can help your colleagues and parents in your program make personal connections to global education, and really to build some strong advocacy for global education in your learning community. You're going to find an overarching theme throughout the webinar where we focus on commonalities. And we have so much in common with other people around the world. And we're going to take a look at what makes us unique and what is universal. We have a fun exercise around the commonalities. We're going to introduce you to an art experience that you can do with students as well as adults in your learning community. And the first one is really exploring global citizenship. So we always frame our webinars with you thinking about how you're going to use this information. How are you going to implement these ideas back in your school? And this is a fun exercise, a great way for you to immerse colleagues and parents in thinking about a global issue, something that affects everyone on this planet, and communicating it through artwork. And then we have another art experience for you that leans into your curiosities and helps you think about cultural insights. So what is it that you would like to learn about other people and other nations, and express that thinking visually? So when you think about the outcomes of today's webinar and how you can use this information, it's really valuable for three groups that you're working with. The first, of course, at the center of our mind is students, right? So these arts-infused exercises will help students in your school build global awareness. The next is for the adults, parents, and colleagues. You're going to leave this webinar with some art-rich communication strategies that will engage adults in global education. And of course, personal. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and would really encourage you to post your own creative work and to be thinking about how you're going to use these resources. So for any of you who have participated in the Crayola EdWeb sessions before, you know that the Champion Creative Live Children's series really talks a lot about how art builds 21st century skills. And the Partnership for 21st Century Learning has framed those 21st century skills as the 4 C's, right? You remember those are creativity, collaboration, communication, and critical thinking. And we often frame our content around 4 C's because just having the topics start with C's makes them very memorable. So let's introduce you to the 4 C's of global understanding. The first is connections, right? Personally engaging people in a way that awakens their global interest. Next is commonalities and comparisons. So we have more in common with people around the world than differences. And so it's great to be leaning into those commonalities. The next is citizenship and communication. And are you hearing an echo? And so that's really helping students and your colleagues think about what it is to be a global citizen. And then our fourth is the cultural insights. What are you curious about? What would you like to learn about other people? And this is the framework. These 4 C's will be the framework that we've organized our webinar around today. So here I'd love to share some thoughts around global connections that we heard from one of the principals in one of our grant-winning schools, Pat Kannensgeiser, and she has given this advice to her students. It's 2 parts. First, she tells her students, you never leave your heritage or your culture behind. Tap into the strengths of where you came from and how it influences who you are today. So really valuable advice to find your personal cultural roots and context. And then next, she says, you never know where you're going to go in this global world. Be prepared to collaborate or to compete with others growing up around the world. Find your talents and how to connect with others in brave ways. So I love the way she framed the personal connection, our first C here, connection, looking at your own personal heritage and context. And the other is your personal aspirations, right? To open up opportunities regardless of where you live in the world. And so really geographic boundaries have lessened, and there are great opportunities for us to learn from others all around the world. So I love the way she had framed those opportunities. So an exercise we often use as a warm-up It's an activity that gets people started in these global conversations at a staff meeting or a parent meeting, is to talk about both of those personal connections that the principal had recommended. And so we often start with a world map. A couple ways you can use it. You can have participants literally point to their personal connections, perhaps where their ancestors came from, or what countries they're interested in learning more about. Or you can see from the example on the photo that's up in the right corner, this group actually indicated artists that inspire them and where they came from around the world. So just looking at the global map can help to spark that personal conversation, connections conversation. The other photos here show other opportunities to make personal global connections. Right here's a family sharing foods, families talking about traditions from their countries of origin. We are so fortunate today that so many schools have families from dozens of nations. I visited schools that have 20 different languages being spoken. And there's such a richness there to be sharing the traditions, the stories, the food, the visual art, the music, the dance, from what all of those families can bring. So I'd like to introduce you now to our first hands-on exercise. You'll remember that the second of the 4 C's that we outlined for global education is commonalities and comparisons. And this really leans into that insight that the principal provided a few minutes ago that we quoted about how does your heritage impact you today? And so there's some questions that help get people thinking about that, right? So think about in your heritage, in your family's traditions, what are the foods, the special dances? Perhaps there's a family heirloom or artifact. What about the celebrations? Those could be life cycle celebrations or holidays. Think about the sports, the games, the toys, the stories. So just reflecting on these questions and getting some small group discussion can spark some thinking about those ancestral roots and what our relatives have shared with us, the gifts that they've given to us from our family lineage that we still have within us today. So that's a nice setup and essential questions to prepare us for the hands-on art. And here is the art activity that we call commonalities and comparisons. So we think it really helps to visualize this as a garden metaphor, right? And you'll see as we outline the various steps to the activity how it really parallels a garden with, a rich diversity of flowers and plants, and how we use the plant structure as a metaphor. So what we also start to realize through this is within a garden, we're each unique. There are parts that are unique, like the blossoms and the blooms, and there are parts that are universal, like the roots or their stems. And so that really helps to get people to connect to that universal and uniqueness. So let's take a look at the various steps. The first is think about your roots, right? What is deeply rooted in you from your heritage? What sustains you, just in the same way that a root sustains a flower? It's not visible to the outside, right? It's hidden underground, but it's still so strong, holds the plant up, really gives you so much sustenance and grounding. Now you can see from the examples some of the indications people have here. They say their roots are their family stories. Someone put her grandmother's values were part of her roots. Another put that strong sense of independence. Another put that they're grounded, they're rooted to their religion. So that's part of that root, that foundational structure that came from your family. Now next in a plant, you have your stems and your leaves. Think about the metaphor, right? So a stem supports the plant, right? It supports you like your family does. The leaves capture all that great chlorophyll and sunshine, and they nourish the plant, nourish the flower. So think about what is the parallel in your stem and leaf in your family. Is there a legacy that was passed down to you that you hope to pass down to your children and that supports you? So you'll notice in some of the art examples what people put was a growth mindset. They put having family meals together, keeping a positive attitude, making sure that they serve some of their relatives' favorite foods and that the children are aware of what their grandparents' favorite foods were. And someone also added that adding new traditions, traditions that are new to them and their children, is an important part of their stem structure and their leaf structure. I thought that was a really nice addition. Now, the third part of the plant, and this is where we start to get to what makes us unique. Think about the flower, what is most visible, and all the various shapes and colors and forms that the petals and the blossoms come in, right? And so this is a part that could make it feel very special to your family. And look at some of the notes that people put here. Someone comments that they have the memory tree that's really important in their family, that where they spend their holidays and how they decorate for holidays is very unique and very special to them. One person noted that their family roots in New England and the artifacts they brought and the heirlooms were very important. Someone notes some jewelry that they inherited from a grandmother. So it's really up to you how you would frame your personal story of what grounds you to your roots, what's your support stem, and what's your unique petal. But the most important part after the people in your staff meeting or your parent meeting will create this is the discussion. What does their artwork mean to them? And that's really an important part of deepening their understanding of what's unique and universal. So then it's nice to hear about how schools are using that context and really focusing on global awareness with parents and students. So we have a video that was filmed in one of our grant-winning schools, and I think you're going to get a lot of great insights for what you can implement in your school. It's a 4-minute video, and as you're watching it, you might jot down some of the things that you see that really resonate with you, some of the quotes that have a lot of meaning, and ideas that you want to implement. So Charmaine, would you like to play the video?
Creativity connects us.
La creatividad nos conecta.
יצירתיות מקשרת אותנו.
الأعمال اليدوية تجمعنا. شبه means to connect. أنا means us.
Creativity connects the world.
I'm Vicky Lozano, and today we're going to talk about how creativity connects the world. In order to be successful, students need to understand other cultures and traditions by exploring connections, commonalities, citizenship, and cultural insights. Art builds global understanding.
Creativity and the arts connect us, and especially children, to the rest of the world. It's really one of the best ways to get a child to imagine living in a different place. It starts with a curiosity, and then it can grow insights into their own life.
I like to share my culture with the kids. They need to have a large idea about the world.
Here at Waverly Park, we represent 52 different cultures. In order to promote global understanding, we encourage parents to come in. What better way for a child to learn about family and traditions? It's helped us to connect to each other in ways that we could never have imagined before.
Art helps us see what we have in common with people from other cultures.
Geography is not a barrier when the kids realize that the family celebrations we have and the folktales that we study are similar around the world.
Art is innate to who we are as human beings worldwide. All children are born with an urge to create, to make meaning, and to express themselves.
Every culture makes art. We take a look at different traditions of storytelling. They get a chance to compare and figure out what is common and universal to all of us.
Different cultures have different values, and they're represented in their stories. It was interesting to read different Cinderella versions. It shows what makes us unique and universal. Art helps to build global understanding.
Art helps students truly become global citizens, exploring other lifestyles and exploring other cultures.
A global citizen is one who understands that the world is bigger than their own neighborhood or their own school or their own family. Teachers have this special honor and obligation to plant the seeds of that understanding and then to explore it in exciting and creative ways.
We have a sister school in Egypt. We're actually reaching across to each other with hands. This is a hand that was made and sent by a second grader in Egypt. So it's a nice connection between two second graders, two classrooms, two schools.
Exchanging the art makes it really easy for the kids to see, both here and in Egypt, how they have so many things in common with children 5,000 miles away.
As people move in a global world, they still hold precious their heritage. Exploring the arts of many cultures helps students deepen the understanding of themselves.
Art speaks of traditions and it speaks of emotions, and through student artwork, teachers are able to understand how well students have made meaning of what's being taught.
Art is a powerful way to learn about different cultures, sharing what is beautiful about different countries.
When I ask a parent to come into the classroom, I often tell them that I need their creativity, I need their background knowledge, that they love to share their particular culture with the children.
It's good for kids to learn about their classmates, their families, culture. They have a million questions to ask. As long as they're interested, we're here to provide whatever information they need.
Studying arts gives kids the cultural insights to be successful in the 21st century.
Art is really the universal language that helps us accomplish the goals of global understanding.
Arts-infused education is an effective strategy for helping improve student engagement and achievement. At Crayola, we're proud to help teachers and parents broaden the children's view of the world.
Creativity connects the world.
We're just going to dial straight to what we've learned from talking with educators around the world about what does it mean to be a global citizen. And we've got an outline of these that I think you're going to really resonate with you. But again, feel free to add your comments in the text box, and it's a nice way for us to get a sense of your point of view in the text box. So the first, when we think about what does it mean to be a global citizen, the first is to have a broad view of the world, right? Be curious and eager to learn about and appreciate other people and places. And that just seems so foundational. It's the mindset, right? Staying very open. The second is awareness that other countries and other cultures exist. It's sort of breaking out, so you're not narrow-minded. You're really seeing things that could be different around the world. Understand that others experience the world in different ways that aren't any better or any worse than our own experiences, right? It's really validating a lot of different experiences that people have. The next is a realization that our actions affect people we will never meet, but whom we should care about. And in a few minutes, we're going to do a global citizen art project, and this one really resonates. You know, what are issues that affect everyone on the planet? And this is an important part for kids to be thinking about. It ties in well to ecology and environmental messages. It ties in well to conversations about use of water and resources. So it's really thinking that what we do in our communities affects people very far from us. We don't know them, we're never going to meet them, but we care about them. It's a state of mind that is not narrowly focused. It's preparing kids to live in an interconnected global world. It is deeply rooted in respect for other cultures, beliefs, lifestyles, and world languages, right? You probably have noticed there's been a transition. People are calling them rightfully world languages, not foreign languages. It's not foreign to the person who speaks that native tongue. These are world languages. And the last one that we have listed here, although please add to the text box if you have some other thoughts about what it means to be a global citizen. What we have listed here is understand that people across the globe communicate and celebrate and deal with the diversity and opportunities in ways that are both similar and different from ours. So that is a framework that we have for what it means to be a global citizen. I think the image, before we flip from this slide, I just want you to take a look at the child's artwork. Very related to the artwork that you're going to be doing in a few minutes, and we urge you to do after the session. It's to create a piece of art that really demonstrates your awareness of a global issue. And what the child presented here was this knowledge, this awareness the child had, that in many nations around the world, it is easier to get a can of soda than fresh water. And in many developing nations, women and children in particular spend an inordinate number of hours each day walking long distances to collect and carry water back so they can have jugs of clean, drinkable water. And so it's also, this art is also referring to an environmental issue, talking about waste that affects everyone. It's very interesting. You can go on the internet and see the photographs of parts of the ocean that are like totally covered with empty floating plastic bottles. because they don't disintegrate for a very long period of time. They just keep, floating there. So the artwork often reflects a deep understanding that students are getting about how actions, issues affect everyone on the planet. And that's a wonderful segue to the next hands-on art activity. So I know that during a 1-hour webinar, we don't really have time to, completely stop and have you draw each of the pieces. I really hope you do go back and create your garden metaphors to show us your roots, your stems, your flowers that we just did a few minutes ago, and really would love to see the artwork that you create from the Global Citizens Explore Global Issues artwork. You can do it personally and post your own art. You can do it at a staff meeting, a parent meeting with students, but we'd love to see how you take this inspiration and this idea and bring it to life with art. So the process for creating this art is to first pick an issue of global significance, right? So we've talked about a few, but pick one that's of interest to you. And you can see from the two pictures that are shown here, these are representations of no rain and drought. So yes, it's affecting people in California and affects people all over the world when rain and water are truly precious resources that there aren't enough, and that total impact on their lives and their food supply. Then consider what global citizens could do about this issue. Really interesting to do with students. Depending on their developmental level, you could be building awareness. They can be visually communicating the problem. They can start to advocate in environmentally sound and in globally sensitive practices. So really interesting to start challenging kids to think about what they could do about an issue that they choose. And then next, you draw a sketch of the issue and a message that will communicate your thoughts. So it's really start by thinking about what is the message that you want to communicate, and then how can the visuals, those visual tools, and I just want to remind you of the visual art elements and the art elements, the principles of design, because these can help you visually communicate your message, right? So the decisions that you make about the proportion and the size of things in your image, the amount of balance that you might choose to have in your piece, or what stands out really bold with the color choice, the way the lines draw your eyes. So it's not only what you choose to draw, but how you choose to draw it that conveys meaning. And that, again, is another really important way of tying in art integration. Art teachers are experts at using the art elements and principles of design as a way to convey meaning. And so hopefully you can, if you are an art teacher, share that with your colleagues. If you aren't an art teacher, reach out to an art education expert who can help you take this idea and convey it visually. So we want you to take these ideas, the video and the art activities, into a workshop session. You see here a group of educators who are working together as colleagues. And there's a process that we use, whether we're working with students or whether we're working with adults. And it's a 4-step artistic process. Actually, it is the framework for the new art standards. And the 4 steps are: create. Give them time to create their art. Then present. Some of the most valuable time that you spend together is hearing the stories behind their art. What's the message they're conveying? Be sure to give them time to respond to each other and build upon their ideas. So what are they going to do about it now? How are they inspiring each other? And then connect, right? And that's often connecting to the next steps. So what are we going to do individually or collectively as a result of this experience? So this is a 4-step process that we use in every hands-on art experience, whether it's with adults or children. And just would love for you to get in the rhythm of doing it. It is so valuable. It's not just about making art. It's really about taking it to those next steps of presenting, responding, and connecting. So now we're ready to start a conversation around, remember in the outline, we said we were going to have an art activity around cultural insights. So to help set the stage for that next art activity, we're going to ask each of you to think about other people, other places around the globe that intrigue you. Pull up a piece of scrap paper or just text it right in the text box so we can all see it. I'd like you to just start thinking about that question. What unfamiliar places or cultures intrigue you and why? Love to start seeing some text here if people could think about it. And while you're starting to enter your text ideas, I'll share with you some of the other context here. So what we're hoping to see is not about a tourist vacation, right? Not an advertisement to go see the Eiffel Tower and taste the treats of Paris. This isn't a travel brochure. We're really asking you to think deeply about people's daily lives, their life cycle celebrations, what their fears are, how their geographic location influences their traditions. And so then when you think of all of the places in the world, and some of them aren't so focused on in travel brochures or tourist ads, think about the people and those places and what really intrigues you. So I see somebody is putting that the one on the bottom right interests them. And I just want to set a little bit of context here that you can get your inspiration many places. I love that you're getting inspiration from the slide here, and I will talk to you about these photos. But I just want to say your inspiration for and where you want to learn more cultural insights can come from so many places. So think, maybe it's a news report that you recently heard, and you're like, where is that country? Or, wow, they just had some natural disaster. Or, I wonder how it's impacting them. So it could start with that. It could be an internet post that you saw. It could be a novel you read and immersing you in a story and getting to know the characters. So really excited that these photos are inspiring. And I want to say that these photos were taken by my two daughters' college study abroad programs. And so you might even notice in the little footnotes here, one of them was when my younger daughter lived with a family in Orissa, India, and the other is when my other daughter lived with a family in Mongolia, and it was a herding family, and as you can see here, out in the Gobi Desert. So when I saw their photos from their college study abroad program, I was like, I am really curious about these cultures and these people, and it makes you wonder. So when you're out in a nomadic tribe and herding in Mongolia, how do you get fresh food? And where do you go to the bathroom? There's no plumbing, right? So it really asks some pretty interesting questions about how other people we share the planet with live and how their geographic location impacts them. So I'm loving to see these comments you have. Ancient Egypt, Turkey, a pen pal. Somebody did list Mongolia. It's fascinating. Mongolia is in the news a lot. Maybe I'm just really sensitive to it and always cutting out articles from the newspaper and sending to my daughter since she lived there for a year. But once you start getting attuned to what's happening in another nation, it just comes at you from so many different sources. So love that, and I love seeing, and someone said that the genealogy made them interested in whales, and I love that. Absolutely. So be thinking in that way. So both, one of the things to start with is where, the place, and then start to think about the questions you have, right? What would you like to know about those people and their lifestyle? So let's frame it now as your art experience. So it's really, we've got two parts here. First is the planning your piece of art. Imagine immersing yourself in a culture that intrigues you, okay? And we just talked about that. Then the next step would be to create a watercolor resist scene where you imagine yourself being in that culture. We'll explain in a minute what the watercolor resist scene is. And then after you do that scene, that painting, we suggest you frame it with a larger piece of paper and use that frame, that border, to jot down these inquiries. What are you inquisitive about? These questions all around the border. What would you ask them if you were there? So now let's explain the art technique, watercolor resist. It is easy. It is fun. It's a wonderful, simple art technique. So what you do is sketch with a crayon, and you press really firmly so that you get a nice, colorful wax laydown, right? And then you go over your scene with watercolor, and it puts a beautiful background behind, and then that crayon scene just pops because the wax will resist the watercolor. So it's just really dynamic. It's got a feeling of like a layering and a depth, and it's so simple. Now you'll see here on the instructions there's also another step which is optional but fun and great, interesting technique. It adds texture to your piece. You sprinkle some salt, and you can experiment. All different kinds of salt end up with a different kind of texture. Tiny ground table salt has a different texture than large ground sea salt. But you sprinkle it on your watercolor while it's wet, and then you watch that crystallization occur. So as it dries and the water evaporates, the paint moves towards those salt crystals, and it pools together in this beautiful crystallized texture. When it's completely dry, you just rub the salt crystals off, and your artwork is amazing. So a couple of techniques there that help to convey a beautiful scene. So thinking about how you're going to take this hands-on cultural insights exercise to your learning community, be framing it as, what do you want to learn about the people, the place, the culture, right? And how that place influences what they eat, how they live. And we showed you some examples that had some, something pretty different from what you might be familiar with if you've got indoor plumbing, right? And then think about, what would you learn from their beliefs, their fears, their traditions, their aspirations? What would you want to ask them? And so after you finish the watercolor scene, you can see the examples here in the photo. You complete the artwork, you lay it on a piece of larger paper, and you write your questions all around the borders. So just taking a look at the photo here that's on the left side, she drew a nomadic desert scene, and she's asking, how do you get fresh food? Where do you go to the bathroom? And how did this nomadic culture begin in your family and be passed down for generations, right? So just thinking about that got her mind just rolling on a series of questions. And again, the real magic happens after people have finished their artwork, right? You give them time to create, but when they present their stories, they respond to each other, and they connect to other learning opportunities, talking about next steps. That's magical. And so their next steps, the connections will be, how are they going to discover the answers to their questions? Fortunately, with the World Wide Web, they can get all kinds of global connections at their fingertips and find some amazing answers to those. Yeah, that's Michelle Burns and her buddy, look. Absolutely. Michelle, I think you're like in 6 of these pictures. I captured you in North Carolina, in D.C. Michelle is famous. She's like in all of our workshops and all of our photos. Absolutely. There you go, Michelle. And we were just talking about Michelle's artwork, her nomadic scene. That was hers. So as we have a note here on this slide, remember to post your art, right? We would love to see it in the community. And you'll be as famous as Michelle is. Okay, so the key points. We just would like to summarize today's webinar, reviewing the key points, because it's really important as you take this message to others that I think this framework helps to shape the conversation. So when we think about global understanding, the 4 C's help to keep that in mind. It's about personal connections, right? Connections from your personal heritage, connections to your personal aspirations. It's about commonalities and comparisons. We have so much in common with people, and it really is fun to think about what is universal and what is unique. Celebrate, treasure them both, right? Citizenship aims to be a global citizen, and then how art helps you communicate that. Remember, there was a statement that the principal said in the video. I hope some of you picked up on it when we said what quotes resonate. She said, art is the only universal language, right? So, and remember the school where they were sharing art with students 5,000 miles away, and their art just spoke to the kids. It didn't matter that they didn't speak the same language. So there really is only one universal tongue, so to speak, across the world, and that is our art. We can read it, we can understand each other's intent, we can communicate through our visual images, regardless of what language, tongue someone is speaking. So think of art as your universal language and a fabulous communication tool. And then that 4th C, cultural insights. And this is where it gets really deep and really awakening that curiosity and asking good questions. What intrigues you? What would you like to learn about other people? Visualize it and then form a path to get your answers. A couple other key points that we had. Creative experiences unleash the personal to global and the global to local connections and perspectives. And that art provides powerful ways for schools to awaken curiosity, encourage exploration, and improve students' understanding of the world. So we'd like you to reflect on how you're going to use the information in your school, in your community. Who will you collaborate with to create a plan that uses art to build global awareness? So that might be in your school community or in your broader community. Perhaps there are people who are involved in global education at a local university or a local education program or a museum. Many art museums have collections from other countries, and it's a great springboard for learning more about that era and that nation and those people. So think about who you'll collaborate with, and then consider how to connect with others who use creativity to connect to the world. And this leads us to a really exciting new opportunity that we want to talk with you about. And that's the opportunity now to connect with others who share your passion for creativity and art-infused education, right? So when you think about you are a champion of creativity, you are passionate about this, and yet many of you who are arts advocates might feel like you're doing that work in isolation. How great it would be to connect with others, right? Look at the things that our champion creativity community provides. You'll learn from education thought leaders, get updates on arts-infused education and creativity, build creative capacity and leadership skills. You could serve as a liaison between Crayola and your school. It's an opportunity to share your success stories in your professional learning community and receive recognition for being a creative catalyst. So how do you do it? Simple. Become a Crayola Creativity Champion today. And here is the website. You just go to this URL, crayola.com/champions. It's going to ask you some questions about what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, what parts of the community you'd like to have a voice in. And as we develop this web portal more fully, you will have a voice and become an active member in a collaborative community that champions creativity. So wanted to be sure to let you know about that. We just launched it last month at NAEA and are very eager to have additional people joining, so thank you. So we always close with the next steps. So we urge you to review the insights from today's session with your colleagues. Individually, or even better, collaboratively, create artwork from any of the 3 exercises reviewed today. You remember the comparison commonalities with the garden metaphor. I'd love to see your roots, stems, and flowers. The global citizen issues was you take an issue and you look at it from a lens of being a globally aware, globally concerned citizen. And then the third one we just finished was asking questions about people and places, getting cultural insights. So 3 choices here today. Post your art in the EdWeb Champion Creativity Community Discussion Forum. And want to let you know that many of you have done this before, know we give a special recognition to people who post their art. 50 educators who post their Creativity Connects the World art will receive a special gift from Crayola. 24 boxes, and there's a picture there of the 5-count twistable color sticks. They are so much fun. They write like delicious, magical. They're so fluid and rich. Love them. So definitely worth posting your artwork to get those. And just a note that while we'd love to see your art anywhere, from anywhere you live, shipping this gift is only applicable to participants from the United States and Canada. So please be sure to put that artwork up. And I believe June 30th is the cutoff date. So really look forward to seeing that. And questions. Let me see what some of these questions are. Okay, Diane, I think you usually send me some questions that people had texted in the box. Okay, here, Charmaine sent it. All right. So what grade levels are these examples from? So we have done these exercises in elementary schools. And so most of the examples here were done from different ages with elementary students and teachers. But I think the concepts can be applied really throughout the entire age span. A lot of times when we have early childhood educators asking for suggestions on how to make preschool children more globally aware, we suggest that you start with stories about that include characters from other countries, and have conversations about those illustrations, what they're eating, what their homes look like. Again, look for commonalities as well as what might be unique and universal. So often you'll find that even when you do photos or storybooks from other countries, the clothes are pretty much the same unless they're in a traditional celebratory aware. But the sort of universal costume around the world is jeans and t-shirts. But you also then have an opportunity to look at some of the traditional ceremonial dress too. But for preschool, it's usually about storybooks and music, looking at the art in those stories, tapping into all of the arts. And then as children get older, they can write those comments, those questions around the cultural insights border. They can write pieces around the garden metaphor. So certainly love how wise preschoolers can be and the depth of understanding they can get, but we don't want to be pushing them to write before that's developmentally appropriate. So we often suggest that the adults are the scribes and record children's thinking. Oh, I think that we're beyond that now. I love, someone had put that art reflects life, and I love that comment. And you're so right. Whoever wrote in the comments that art reflects life, you are brilliant. And that is why art is such a wonderful access point for getting to know about other people and other cultures, right? Because really, what has sustained cultures over time? When you think about civilizations that were so strong and aren't with us anymore, what lasts is their art. And we learn about them from their art. We learn about what they valued, what they treasured, how in their decoration they depicted daily life. So important. So I see another note here. A person said that their school district is becoming more and more diverse. And the person who wrote this comment said this would be a great program to share with their PTA, that she hadn't thought about bringing the parents in to share these creative experiences with their students. So thank you. Love that. Absolutely right. And we really encourage you to work with your PTA. Do this at a parent meeting. That's beautiful. So you can show the video, and you can have the conversations, ask the questions. They can make the artwork and talk about the artwork, and before you know it, you have had a truly meaningful parent meeting that is going to be really memorable. I see another comment here that said that their students, these are 6th grade elementary students, go to the Dallas Museum of Art to view African, Egyptian, and other art from other parts around the world, and that they're going to use that as a springboard for this diversity conversation and exercises. Yes, I love what you're saying here in this. So it is so important to give children the art inspiration, right? Show them either images that you can pull from the internet, or even better, if they can go to this museum. So wonderful that you go to the Dallas Art Museum and you're viewing authentic artifacts, authentic pieces of art from these pieces. But then it's about the conversation, and it's about applying it in the way that we talked about in these exercises. Ask your questions, find out what they're curious about, get those global insights. And so that's what's so really important, that students don't just sort of passively go on a field trip, think it looks pretty, walk away. They have to internalize it. And so the exercises that we've given to you today help them internalize this understanding. So that's really very helpful. Thank you. Wow, I'm just looking at these comments. These are fantastic. I'm noticing people are talking about the museums that are available to them, and that is so important. You're really not in this alone. there are, many of you are living in communities that have museums, museum educators, these artifacts. They would love to share this with you. And even if you are geographically far from a museum, you will be amazed at how much is available from museum websites online. The National Gallery of Art is extremely generous in the kinds of images that they have. Okay, and then Charmaine's saying she's got a few more questions. So someone is asking about, sort of to be sensitive. What about sensitivities to issues around the home? And so I'm really glad you brought that up, because part of cultural understanding and cultural awareness is being knowledgeable about sensitive issues. So for example, I was just talking with one of our grant-winning schools that's working with a number of Native American tribes. Their school is very close to a reservation, and there are, I believe they said, a dozen different Native American tribes in that reservation, and the students come to the school. And so their teachers have become experts at understanding a lot of the cultural differences of each of those nations, those Native American nations. And so much so that they were doing a really interesting project. They were doing storytelling bead necklaces, right? And the kids were making different animal beads that would help them with their storytelling. It's a very traditional, storytelling is very rich in the Native American culture. It's an oral tradition. And the teachers were very sensitive, because in one culture, the bison is a symbol of strength. In another culture, it's the hawk. And so if you want to represent strength in your story, to be knowledgeable about which animal to use based upon the tribe. But even more important, they said, they learned that the owl, there was another animal, I'd have to go back to my notes to see, but definitely the owl, so the owl and a turtle, there were animals that were a concern. They were very sensitive to different tribes. And it was an omen of something bad going to happen to a family member. And so it was really important for the teachers to not carelessly or sort of randomly tell kids to make owls or turtles, because they really needed to do the homework, and they needed to be sensitive to each of those families, and in those situations it was their Native American tribes, beliefs and traditions about something as simple as a bead that a child would make on a storytelling necklace that would represent an animal. And I just think your question about being sensitive to children from different families and different cultures, absolutely. We are so fortunate to have such diversity and such rich, richly blended communities here, that we need to respect that each of these families and each of these Native American tribes has a point of view that needs to be understood. So thank you. Great. I'm trying to see. I think, okay, time for us to pass it over to Wanda. Thank you. Okay, great. Here we go.
Thank you, Sherry. Wow, what a riveting and engaging presentation, and love hearing those stories that were kind of sprinkled throughout. So I'm just going to wrap up, but before I do, just would like to give you a few reminders. Just again, if you are with us today with this live presentation, you will be receiving a CE certificate to the email address that you used to log on today, and you will be receiving that within 24 hours. Also, if you're on the phone with us, you too will receive the certificate, but first you would have to take the quiz, the CE quiz, and if you watch any of the recordings in our webinar archives, you would have to take take a quiz also. But to take the quiz, you must be a member of our community. So please make sure you join the community at edweb.net/creativity, and you will have access to the CE quiz in our webinar archives. Crayola is very happy to be a sponsor of the Champion Creativity, the Power of Art Infused Education community, but we also would like to invite you to explore our website at Crayola.com/educators, and there you will find information on our professional development resources, as well as lesson plans and other helpful information to use in your learning community. Also, just want to let you know that this is an ongoing series, and so we have another webinar scheduled for you coming up on Tuesday, August the 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The topic of that webinar is Reading Art Enriches Writing, and Sherry will once again be our presenter, but she will actually have a co-presenter that day, who will be Kristen Walter, our Innovative Teaching and Learning Specialist. And check out that artwork that we dangled out there. If that's not a nice tease, to get you to join us for the next webinar, I don't know what is. So what a nice prompt to kind of give you a heads up to how reading art enriches writing. So I think that's, well, no, I guess that's not it. Once again, I want to remind you about joining the community. And as a member, to receive upcoming webinars, invitations to the one I just showed you, as well as others in the future, you'll need to be a member. You'll also be able to access the webinar recordings and resources, take the CE quizzes, and participate in engaging interactive online discussions. So once again, down at the bottom right is the link in order to join the community, and hope to see you there. So now I can wrap up. Thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. We really enjoyed the topic for today, enjoyed your comments, and really hope to see you at our next webinar. Thank you, and take care.